So this exhibition is titled "The Trace Left by the Future," and all of the works in this exhibition I think of as like artifacts from the future, but from an uncertain future, a future where there's no human presence, where objects and technology take on organic properties, and where the past becomes reimagined in the future in interesting ways. And so it's a very conflated vision where elements are changing and meanings are changing. And so I present this vision of the future to here in this exhibition through video, through sculpture, and through printed work as well. I think there's technology. We're becoming more and more reliant on technology, more and more dependent on technology. And I think this is very dehumanizing to us, where we spend more time apart and where our understanding of what being human is maybe changing a little bit. And so I don't put any human figures into my work, or if they are, they're like what we call like maybe like a cyborg or like a robotic human figure like you see in the animation. So I think it's addressing concerns about how we lose our humanity when we become over-reliant on technology. I think what got me into making art was actually video games, and I played a lot of video games when I was younger, and I began to design some of the environments for these video games. It was just something I wanted to do when I was young. And this led me on a path to where I am today, because I began to learn a lot about computer graphics, and I began to study computer graphics. And through studying computer graphics, I also learned about art, and I began to study art and art history. And with my work, I like to think of them as somewhere in between a video game and a film, because they're not interactive. You can't explore these worlds as as somebody that could control it. But the way I work with my camera, my virtual camera, and the way that I assemble these films is sort of similar to a video game, because there's no cuts or edits, there's no start or stop, there's no fade-ins or fade-outs. It's a single continuous loop. And so you experience these virtual worlds I create, much like how somebody exploring a video game might experience these worlds. This animation reimagines symbols associated with the apocalypse. A lot of biblical symbols from the book of Revelations, like the 4 horsemen or the 7-eyed lamb. So it's like imagining the apocalypse for the present day. And so I'm referencing sort of all of that, not just the biblical framework of it. But artists throughout time have always reimagined, they've always been fascinated by the book of Revelations. And so Albrecht Dürer, for instance, and many other artists. I just went to the Hermitage here in St. Petersburg, and I saw many depictions of the book of Revelations, St. John's vision. So these have all, so I've been influenced by all these artists, and I'm trying to do my own version today. A lot of the imagery that you see in this work, you see a lot of Baroque ornamentation and a lot of Baroque details in architecture. And the Baroque period was a period of decadence and opulence. And ultimately, that decadence and opulence led to its decline in many cultures, in French, Russian history. And that, I think, is an interesting parallel to draw today to our society, which is also very decadent, but with technology and with our consumer culture. And will this lead to perhaps a downfall or a change? I don't know. That's what the question that the exhibition poses, I suppose. Well, all of my work has this tension between the real and the virtual, because all of my imagery is virtually created. But if you look, there's a lot of soft fabrics, there's a lot of things that are very seductive, there's a lot of things you might want to touch, but you can't because they're not real, it's this virtual imagery. And even with my sculptures, the sculptures are hard, they're made of plastic and other hard materials, yet they look like soft fabrics, they look like pillows. And so this tension between the real and the physical and the virtual, all of these tensions are very important to my work, and they address this tension that we have today where the virtual world is becoming so ubiquitous and so all-encompassing that it might be difficult for us sometime in the future to determine what's real and what's virtual. The lines between the virtual and the real world are becoming blurry, and my work addresses that.